I'm gonna do this every time because it's just so fun. My year with an INFJ. I'm gonna tell you about my experience. 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year with an INFJ. Probably the most rewarding relationship that I've ever had in terms of personal growth. The relationship was a struggle. Um, Half my fault, half her fault. Um, I was definitely at a point in my life where I was coming to terms with components of myself that I didn't feel comfortable acknowledging previously. So it was like a really transitional period for me. I didn't know it at the time, and it maybe didn't appear that way at the time, but I definitely was coming from a place of feeling a need from others. Like I needed something from other people. Help, maybe. Maybe I just felt like life was too overwhelming to take on by myself, and I wasn't comfortable in my ability to handle life on my own. So that gives you some idea of my mind state. Her mind state, if I was going to guess on it, probably very similar. I think that, I always say that like attracts like. You get what you are, you find what you are, or it finds you. So I think she was probably in a pretty similar state. We both had 3 kids. So, and interestingly enough, when we met, our kids were, I think there were 8, 9, 10, 11, and then 2 16-year-olds. So this was about 6 years ago because my daughter's 22 now. And so what did I learn? I was very much so at a point where I was extremely focused on integrating my mind and my heart, like very, very focused. And I went into the relationship knowing that there was a lot of growth potential. I went into the relationship very open and very curious about what it would be like. I um where else was my head? I think I went into it with a little bit of an idealization of INFJs and probably overestimating their ability to read people, their ability to empathize, their ability to be sensitive. Um, and I mean, I'll even, for the sake of this video, just say, no, I'm going to say INFJs in general because I think that a lot of the internet creates sort of a false narrative, if you will, on an INFJ. And probably one that isn't even good for the INFJ's mental health because nobody could live up to, certain things. Like we're human, right? We're gonna flaw, and we're gonna mess up, and we're flawed. Um, so I loved her energy. I loved her perspective. She offered perspectives that I didn't see. Um, I liked her. I think it was a really good balance of me kind of tugging her out of her shell and her knowing she needed that, and then her kind of grounding me and me knowing that I needed that. Um, I I remember we took a trip. We took a trip together. Like she had a good childhood. And I had a good childhood. Both of our parents are still married. I think her parents were very loving and sweet. My parents were very loving and sweet. So I think that was a nice place to start. Just in terms of a foundation for relationship like expectations or what you might call it. I know a lot of people that come from divorced childhoods or divorced parents struggle with seeing relationships as viable or long lasting. Um, let's see, what else can I tell you? So we shared a lot of things, a lot of interests. She just for privacy reasons, I won't specify too much, but she got into something kind of artistic and wanted to do it for a living. And me being an ENTP, I was very energized by that and kind of pushed her to take it to the next level. Something that I had gotten feedback from her on that she would have never done had I not sort of pushed on it. So I know she was really happy she did. And I love getting involved. I love learning about this new interest of hers. I loved helping with it. We would literally spend hours at the table working on projects together. And it was probably one of my favorite things to do at the time. It was just really, really enjoyable. Let's see. Flaws, struggles. This is a really tough one for me because I was a very different person. So like this relationship really set me apart from like an old me in terms of my growth and my learning. So there's a lot that I just would never handle the same. So I can't say, all I can do is take responsibility for my part. All I can do is say situations arose. I dealt with them poorly. I dealt with them immaturely. I didn't make the right choices in terms of setting limits for myself. And sometimes when we don't set limits for ourselves, then we get upset with the other person. Instead of holding ourselves accountable, we're upset that somehow the other person got us to this place, instead of thinking, why did I let them get me here? So I think our communication was overall okay. I just think that we were probably both in more of a desperate place in life, where we both were sort of looking for a life raft to cling to. And I think two people in that place is a really bad thing. Probably can work if you have one really solid person that can help the other person, and the other person knows they need help and is willing to take the guidance from their partner. But that didn't work for us. So we have two people that are probably both struggling and both dealing with issues, and we're trying to cling to each other. And so there were a lot of issues related to that. Other than that, I think we traveled well. We managed kids stuff really well when we would go out with our 4 kids. That all went really well. She, I think, did a really good job of balancing, making sure her kids were respectful. She was always on top of them eating well and things like that. I think together we actually, I can critique her on things, but they would be the opposing things to what she would be able to critique me on. So collectively, I think we brought a really good balance to our kids' lives in general. Like, actually, I think really kind of an amazing balance. I think I was a good level of stability and male energy for her kids, and she definitely was a much needed feminine force in my kids' lives. So I think that sort of sums it up. Like, growth wise, I fucking made leaps and bound strides with this relationship, and it left me almost feeling like the allure of INFJs was just sort of gone. I wasn't like, I need what they have to offer. I was like, okay, I see you, you're real, you're human, you have real and human flaws, and you've been able to share some really amazing perspectives with me that were much needed to create balance in my life. So it sort of left me feeling like I got that thing I needed from INFJs, and now it doesn't feel the same way. Like, oh my God, I need that thing. I need that balance. I need that energy. She brought a lot of calm and peace to me that I don't think I could have otherwise gotten. Her demeanor in general, her house, the way her house smelled, the way she decorated her house, it was all completely amazing and beautiful to me. It felt like home. Like, it felt more like home than my own home ever felt to me. So she kind of gave me that gift. I don't think she read me well. I don't think she read me particularly well. And I gave a lot of leeway for her sort of operating in this blind spot to me, where I would be like, okay, I'm going to trust her on this. I'm going to trust her intuition, because this is like kind of what I went into it biasedly thinking. This is the INFJ skill set. This is the ENTP skill set. And I'm going to let her do her INFJ thing, and she should let me do my ENTP thing. And I think that was probably just a wrong mentality to go into it with. So I would trust her intuition on things sometimes, even when I was in doubt, because I was like, oh, she's got this like extra ability, when the reality is she didn't. And in a lot of cases, I probably read situations better, or I definitely read situations and people's intentions better, substantially better. And I found that to be the case with pretty much every INFJ I've ever known. I'm a much better read of people and their intentions. I think ENTPs are pretty good at that, because it's not clouded. So I guess that's it. Like, we like ended poorly. It sort of, everything went down. I treated the end of the relationship very much so like I actually looked at it the same way that I would look treating a drug addiction or some other addiction. I think there was some addictive component to us that skewed a lot of our judgment and thinking. Definitely skewed my judgment and thinking. I can't speak for her, but I'm fairly certain she would say the same thing. And so I treated ending the relationship like an addiction, for sure. Like, that was absolutely necessary. It was one of those things that it really needed to end, and we both really, really struggled with. So that's my experience on it. Like, I would say it was pretty neutral. She never did anything that I considered to be malicious. She never did anything particularly hurtful. I think probably the most hurtful thing she ever did was she sent me a text one time where she said she never met me. That sort of sucked, but I understood. She did gaslight a lot. There was a lot of like, and that's in part my fault, because she would say these things and I would think she had this like knowing or this insight that I didn't necessarily have. And so I would trust her, as I mentioned earlier, on some of this stuff and her intuitions and how she perceived things. And as a result, like, I sort of ended up, being, I didn't trust my gut. And so it's like I almost gaslighted myself by not trusting my own intuition. And like I said, in part, I think that was because I thought that there was some angel-like component to an INFJ. So a lot of the issues that were there could have been avoided had I just gone into it like, this is a real person. They're going to make flaws. They're going to make fucked up decisions just like me or anybody else. They're going to make mistakes just like me or anybody else. And I didn't go into it thinking they are going to be like above reproach in these certain areas. And so I think that's it. This is 13 minutes and coming up on 14 minutes. I don't think there's any need to say anything else. I think I pretty much summed it up, but if you do have any questions, if you're an INFJ and you have a question, or you're an ENTP and you have a question, please feel free to ask. I do think it's a super growth-driven relationship. I think it has more potential than probably any other dynamic, ENTP, INFJ. If you can come together, you can talk about flaws, and you're both willing to put in the time, the effort, and you're dedicated and devoted to it, I think the dynamic has a ton of potential, but it's certainly not for everybody. And I think it comes with an enormous amount of flaws, and I do think it's a bad match overall. I do think that it always leaves the INFJ I think it leaves a sensitive INFJ always kind of in this place of feeling hurt and feeling damaged and feeling wounded and feeling victimized by the ENTP, and I don't think that's fun for either side. But alright, those are my thoughts on this shit. And you fucking INFJs are welcome to thumbs down this shit because you like thumbs downing my stuff, and it's totally cool. I get it. It's whatever. So feel free to thumbs down it. Feel free to unsubscribe, and there you go. All right, my fade out.